wait. For Max Verstappen, a championship could well be his. The two McLarens have started together on a front row. It's lights out and away we go. Great reaction from Oscar Piastri. Decent reaction too from George Russell, who's already alongside Lando Norris. And Max Verstappen is getting swallowed up a little bit. Piastri leads into the first corner. George Russell on the outside. What a fantastic battle, and a battle for the lead. Sees George Russell get past Oscar Piastri. That could be about to change hands once more, because there's DRS on board for the Australian. Wheel to wheel with George Russell. Goodbye, George Russell. That says Oscar Piastri, and he swoops back into the lead. His time has come now in the sprint. His first win in Formula One for Oscar Piastri. And Max Verstappen, who's put in max effort, has sealed it in the sprint. Max Verstappen, a three-time champion of the world. And Oscar Piastri in his rookie season, what a start he has made to his Formula One career.
Indeed he has, and with the new Formula One season about to launch in Bahrain, what an absolute privilege to have as our guest the man who gives it voice, commentator David Croft. Crofty, welcome to the show, heading towards Bahrain.
Hello. Yeah, I'll get there eventually. I'm ready to be there now.
Yes.
But my plane was late taking off from London, which was brilliant because I could watch the West Ham match in full last night, and thankfully we picked up our first win of 2024. But that meant I missed my connection, so I'm about 40 minutes from getting on a plane to get to Bahrain. So perfect timing, chaps. You've got me for about 15 minutes.
Love it. Bahrain, of course, I think that was where you made your commentary debut in 2006?
It was, yeah. I had slightly less grey hair than I've got now. 2006, Fernando Alonso won. I thought, this is the best job in the world. I know everything about Formula One, and about 2 minutes into the race, realised I knew nothing about Formula One. It was about time I learned. So 350 races later, I'm still doing it, still learning, and I still think it's the best job in the world.
It's brilliant. Look, F1 fans around the world are just waiting for the famous line, lights out and away we go, which is a line I use in a completely different context.
We need to talk about this. Who were you with and what were you doing?
That just came out without me thinking about that whatsoever. Now, what we just saw in that intro, we kind of cannily put together the two things. It was a sprint race. It was a sprint race where our boy Oscar Piastri won it, yet Max Verstappen got enough points to win the championship. Let's start with Max. Is it tough to come up with new and interesting ways to describe him winning a race?
Yeah, I think I've pretty much exhausted most of them by now. It's not, because you're in the moment and you don't come up with pre-prepared lines as a commentator. You come up with what you feel is right at that particular time, and there's always a pun or two. As when we went to Vegas, for instance, what Verstappen's in Vegas stays in Vegas was very much off the top of my head, and one that I wasn't planning to use at all until he crossed the line. And you also, in Formula One, you never know how a race is going to finish. You just played that Qatar sprint, and there were two things as a commentator to get over there. Oscar Piastri's first win, which was very important, and one that we will play over and over again as he wins more and more, and I'm absolutely certain Oscar Piastri will win multiple Grand Prix in his career. And then, of course, Max Verstappen stealing the championship. So there is an elongated version. You cut it down slightly, and hopefully I marry the two together. But that boy Piastri, he is something special, and I think Australian Formula One fans are going to be cheering him on to victory, multiple victories for many years to come now.
Crofty, we've seen you call races in sleet and rain and call them brilliantly. Is there ever any time when it doesn't work out that you think, oh, I'd love to have that one again?
Once. Okay, so once at Monza, in my early days at Sky, the light was kind of low. The sun was low in the sky, and the camera is a long way from the start line at Monza. And I got distracted by something like fourth or fifth row, and missed the fact that Nico Rosberg was leading Lewis Hamilton going into the first corner and then coming out of it. And I called Lewis Hamilton leading, as often happened when they were teammates. And then it was only about 4 corners later I realised, oh dear, got this wrong. It's actually Nico that's leading the race. So I kind of quickly corrected myself and moved on. And then when we got to the end of the race, I re-recorded the start for the highlights. I thought, I've got away with this. No one will ever remember it. Fast forward to the next race, Russia. I'm having a meal in a restaurant with all my Sky colleagues, and Nico Rosberg's at the very next table. He gets up to leave, and he says, "Oh, by the way, Crofty, you need some glasses." As you can see, I've now got them. I said, "Do I?" He said, "Yes, that was me leading, Lewis, not the other way round. You got it wrong." I said, "Yeah, like, I'm really sorry, mate. You know, these things happen." "Yes, but you need to get your eyes checked." So I'm thinking at this stage, don't carry this conversation on because you're in front of my mates here and this is quite embarrassing. But he did, and he kept on going. And so after he mentioned my glasses 3 or 4 times, I just turned around and said, "Yeah, Nico, I tell you what, mate, I'll do you a deal. When you get ahead of your teammate a little more often, I'll believe it when I see it." How does that sound? At which point, I think I broke his heart that night, and it's taken him a while to forgive me. Luckily, he has, and we'll be commentating together, and he'll be correcting me, I'm sure, on air.
Well, Crofty, you mentioned 350 races into this magnificent career, but you've got to cut your teeth somewhere, and all those years ago, is it true you cut your teeth with darts to open your commentary career?
It is. Yes, it is. I started off covering the Lakeside World Championship. In fact, the first year that I covered the Lakeside for radio, Tony David, a man from Townsville, won it. An incredible week where he came from absolutely nowhere and won the World Darts Championship. And I actually had a bet on him that week at about 40-1, which paid for the barbell for the week, which was fantastic. And I wasn't the only one as well, because he'd been there. Those in the know knew that Tony David was something special. But yeah, darts was very much my sport before Formula One. If you go onto YouTube, there is a classic clip that I'm sure Australians still remember of a guy called Tony Fleet playing Martin Adams that I had the privilege of commentating on. And when I say privilege, I mean that very much with the tongue firmly in that cheek. Tony Fleet was possibly the worst darts player who's ever graced the Lakeside World Championship. And he was dropping his darts before the match even got underway. He was also a little bit under the influence. And dragged Martin Adams down to the extent that, you know, both were averaging about 50 by the time the match finished. It went 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, and Tony Fleet was lucky to get nil, quite frankly. It's one of the worst games of darts you could ever wish to see.
Crofty, we Australians are a very shallow people, so in terms of the F1, we're really only interested in other Australians. You've mentioned Oscar. What about Dan Ricciardo is bringing the grin back to the paddock, which I think is brilliant, but he was also pretty quick just recently in the testing.
Yeah, listen, at this time last year, did we really think we'd be having a conversation about Daniel Ricciardo and setting, smiles around the paddock and setting the track alight? Look, there he is in his new RB car. I'm not going with any other acronym, and I'm certainly not going to be mentioning the sponsors on this one, although there is the possibility for puns and all that for this season. I think this is a big season for Daniel. I really do. He was unlucky last year that he came back and he broke his hand. And what he said, we spoke about it at the airport going out to Singapore. It's just a pathetic accident. And it was one of those really silly accidents where it caused more damage to him really than the car. But if he has a good season this season, if he's consistent, and the RB should be a better car than the AlphaTauri was last year, then arguably he could put himself in the frame for a return to the senior team. And we didn't think about that 12 months ago. Daniel Ricciardo was taking a year out and seeing what could happen after that.
There's a seat for Dan Ricciardo. There's always a seat for you on this panel if you are ever in the country and need it. Lovely to talk to you. All the best in Bahrain and beyond.
It's lights out and away we go very, very soon. Can't wait to get down to Australia. If you're in Adelaide, by the way, and you go to the Adelaide Motorsport Festival, Sunday night at the Arca Bar, I'm doing a live show. And if you're in Perth, on the Monday and Tuesday, after the Australian Grand Prix, I'm doing 2 live shows. Always something to talk about in Formula One, so come along, have some fun.
Brilliant sell, mate, brilliant. And you can catch Crofty obviously calling every race of this year's Formula One season live and exclusive on Fox Sports. And of course, it all kicks off this week in Bahrain with coverage starting Thursday from 10 p.m. You won't miss a thing all the way through to the big race early Sunday morning. Coming up, though, it's our Champ of the Week. Stick around.